Today is our monthly meeting of the Seniors Connecting Group.
Microphone.
Oh, yes, microphone.
Microphone.
Yes, I forgot. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Linda Sullivan, meeting at the UUCG, representing the Seniors Connecting Group. Ken and I are going to present a little stories about our experience of planning for the next phase of our life. And we have a small group here today, probably owing to Thanksgiving and the cold weather. So we're just going to do our conversation after Ken and I do our little talk together here in the front, and everybody online can participate or hear it, listen to us. So, hello everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm going to start by a chalice lighting. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. I got it. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us, by Albert Schweitzer. First on the hit parade today is going to be Ken, who's going to share his experience.
All right, I'm on the air. I had some wonderful advice from a Unitarian minister in Raleigh years ago, and I'm going to try to remember it today. She said, when you are speaking to a group through a microphone, always speak slower than you think you need to, because I tend to talk too fast. So I'm going to avoid that. Linda has asked me to tell you about my experience of preparing ahead of time before it became a crisis to move into to a place where we are well supported. I've been a Unitarian since 1963, I think, before we merged, and I've been a Buddhist since about 1990. So I now call myself a Buddhitarian. And one of the practices that I've learned from Thich Nhat Hanh, who is my mentor, is to recite daily the 5 remembrances of the Buddha. And it's basic, profound wisdom. I am a being whose nature is to get sick. I cannot escape sickness. Number 2, I'm a being whose nature is to get older. I cannot escape getting older. Number 3, I am a being whose nature is to die. I cannot escape death. Number 4, everything and everyone I care about will go away, and I cannot hold on to any of them. And number 5, my actions are my only true belongings. Karma. So I've been steeped in that thinking for a long time. So about 3 years ago, when I was 75 years old, still in excellent health, living in a nice house, everything was going fine, except Mary Alice was beginning to have some balance problems, having a hard time getting up and down. And I realized that both of us are getting older, including me. And I realized, since what this wisdom from the Buddha is actually really true, I am going to get old, we're going to get old, we're going to get sick, we're going to die, things are going to get worse as you get older, it's inevitable. Plan ahead. So we spent 6 months getting our house cleaned up, getting rid of stuff, putting the house on the market, found a really nice community to live in called Carolina Estates here in Greensboro. We love it there. It's wonderful. And 2 days after we moved in successfully, I went into the hospital. Had triple bypass surgery and a coronary and a new valve replacement. I had no idea how soon that the number 1 on the list, getting sick, would hit me. And it was very, very fortunate, because when I was in the hospital, I was confident Mary Alice was being well cared for. I didn't have to worry about her. While I was in the hospital, she fell, couldn't get up. But she pulled the string in the apartment. Someone came. They called 911 to help. She's okay, they got her up. But if she'd been at home alone while I was in the hospital, she would have been on the floor probably for who knows how long, waiting for somebody to wonder, well, I wonder how Mary Alice is doing. So it was very, very fortunate. And when I came home from this heart surgery, recovery was so much easier. All our meals were prepared for us. no stairs to climb, physical therapist available for rehab right on site. It was wonderful. It was perfect thing. It was ideal, just in the nick of time. Several other things have happened. About a year or so after we were there, Mary Alice developed a problem with her spinal column, pinching her nerves, and they said she might become paralyzed if she didn't get surgery. She had surgery, came back to our place, recovered quite well. Then it turns out she also has a permanently debilitating condition. It's a neurological disorder that's very rare, called PSP. Just in case you want to know what that means, it means progressive supranucleic palsy. I won't explain the details, but basically it's a progressive disease. It's not going to get better. She is slowly losing her ability to think clearly, losing her ability to come up with words, having a hard time with all sorts of little things. But because we're in this place, it's really pretty easy to manage. I'm her caretaker. Today, I'm here and she's at home, and I have someone that I'm paid to be with her while I'm gone. She's in good hands. And not only is she in good hands with that caretaker, she's surrounded by friends, having lunch with her friends right now. So I'm so fortunate to be there. And I think we have the experience frequently of seeing people come in because their kids pressure them to come in. They come in resentful. They don't want to be there. But eventually, most of them finally get used to it. I think doing what we did, taking ahead of time, before you know it's coming, be ready for it. Such a smart thing to do. It's also a real gift to our son, Johnny. We have gotten rid of all of our stuff already. We are in a safe place that he has a family, he has a full-time job. He knows we're okay, and it's a great relief for him. And one of the things I think is, and you're going to hear more about this from Linda, but basically sparing your children from having to make decisions about where you're going to live, what to do with your stuff, I think is a real gift to your kids. Let me see if I've forgotten anything on my list here. Oh, and I had knee replacement surgery
Right.
about 6 months ago, and was much easier because we have physical therapy and right in the building, and so before surgery I went through an active physical therapy to get ready to get my legs strong before the surgery, and after the surgery, really extremely helpful. So I recovered very quickly from my knee surgery, primarily because I had access to those services, and they were so helpful. They knew things I didn't know. So it's really, really quite wonderful to be there. Where we live is it's called independent living. They don't provide any medical care. It's all people hire people like I've done today to be with them, but they don't. It's basically for people who usually, by and large, are still pretty independent. We love it there, and I'm so glad that we took the time ahead of time before we ran into the brick wall. Mm-hmm. And I hope all of you who are listening will heed my wisdom. Don't wait until you get your back up against the wall before you, I can't say that word on, but I've got to do something now. Oh, shoot. Okay, Linda.
Well, I'm going to follow up and reinforce Ken's advice here. To plan or not to plan, that is the question. As Ken's story pointed out so well, whether we plan or not, stuff happens. Having a plan, however, as we so well learned from Ken, can help ameliorate the consequences. Note that I said can, because there's no such thing as a foolproof plan. Stuff will happen that you just didn't or can't plan for, of which my daughter continuously reminds me, much to the chagrin of my type A personality. Nonetheless, it's definitely better to have a plan, and one that is more than, I'm going to keep on staying here until disaster forces me to do otherwise, which was my parents' plan. My parents were not big fans of moving. They lived all their adult lives in the Hudson Valley of New York in just a few rented apartments. They spent 21 years in their last one. Even as their houses and neighborhoods decayed all around them, it took a force greater than themselves to get them to move. In 1997, the move was most profound to North Carolina. And the force was my dad crashing through a plate glass window into a car dealership, which miraculously he survived with just some cuts and bruises. This did not just happen out of the blue. He had been declining physically and cognitively for several years. My mom would call me, give me a litany of all the odd things he was doing or forgetting, in addition to the list of her physical maladies. And each time, we would have the same discussion. Me, Mom, why don't you move down here to North Carolina? You need more help. You have 4 kids here. It's cheaper. It's warmer. It hardly ever snows. Mom, where can I get a job? No one will hire me. I'm 73. I have to stay where I am. Now, she was working full-time as head nurse on the night shift in a nursing home at age 73. This was a weekly conversation. She imagined every negative thing that might happen if they moved, but somehow could not picture what was going to happen months, much less years, down the road if they stayed where they were. It was an eternal state of not yet, until it wasn't. My dad's accident made it clear to us kids and to everyone who knew him, including the local police, that my dad was not fit to drive, and maybe not fit to stay by himself. Even my mom had some fleeting thoughts that this might be the case. In any event, their car was totaled, my dad's license was revoked, and my mom, who never learned to drive, lost her free taxi service to and from work, putting a serious dent in her plan to work until she died in her nursing shoes. As luck would have it, their lease was going to be up in 6 weeks after my dad's accident, and it was summer. North Carolina college students were gone and apartments were available. Post haste, my sister found them one in Chapel Hill, right down the street from my sister's house. My daughter and I flew to New York and began the job, and what a job, of cleaning out their apartment. We spent 2 weeks hauling box after box after box out of closets and rooms, which contained stuff my mom had not seen or touched in years. She felt compelled to open every one and inspect its contents, telling us, "It's still good, someone could use it." Sometimes true, sometimes not. Numerous trips were made to the Salvation Army down the street or to the dumpster in the basement of their 4-story walk-up apartment. My youngest brother, who was going to be loading the rental truck and driving it to Chapel Hill, flew up towards the end of the 2nd week. At the same time, we flew my parents to North Carolina, so they would not have to witness the total emptying of their home. On our last day there, my brother and his friend loaded all the stuff they could fit in the truck and left the rest on the curb. My parents did not get to decide what to keep and what not to keep. There was no time, and most of all, no plan. No list of what they thought was most important. No downsizing that they did themselves over time. We did our best to squeeze what we thought was important on the truck. Then it was 11 p.m. on the last day of the lease and time to go. We bought them some new beds and a new dining room set for their new apartment, which was quite lovely after my artistic sister Mary arranged all the furniture in a way that pleased even my sometimes mad and mostly sad mom. She lamented the loss of her old neighborhood with familiar people, stores and bakeries she could walk to. She missed her job, being needed, having a societal role, and the camaraderie of work friends. My dad missed the deli across the street where he went every day to get a ham sandwich, play the numbers, and tease the owner. Mostly, he missed his car. He would sit out on their little Chapel Hill porch, which faced the parking lot, and say to me, wistfully, "I wish I could drive somewhere, Lynn." A year and a half later, after numerous falls, illnesses, and ongoing decline, all of which were borne mostly by my mom, my dad died. We were preparing to search for an assisted living place after Easter. Instead, he died of a massive heart attack at home in his favorite chair on Good Friday. Only a couple of weeks before he died did we manage to get the legal documents executed so that he had a will, a living will, a power of attorney, and a health power of attorney, which I am going to say paid for itself 100 times over the week he died and the ones immediately following. The year after he died, my mom moved to Greensboro. Needless to say, she was not happy about it until she was. She had her own apartment in the same little complex that I lived in, and within a few weeks, she knew more of our neighbors than I did after living there for years. However, other than the legal documents, there was no more of a plan for her than there had been for my dad. So 7 years later, when her physical and cognitive decline made it impossible for her to live by herself, we rented a house where we could live together. We kept thinking there was no way we could afford any kind of congregant care space. Not that she was interested, even though living together was often stressful for both of us. But what many of us do not realize is the cost of winging it at home. Not only in financial terms, but also in terms of its toll on the caregiver and the cared for. I was very fortunate in having good friends and neighbors, a good doctor for my mom, and the Adult Center for Enrichment and its wonderful staff. Also, my mother's brother, Uncle Harry, had the means and the generosity to contribute $1,000 a month to us so I could hire an in-home caregiver to cover the hours for when I was at work and she was not at Adult Center for Enrichment. Nonetheless, I still went into debt, which took several years to pay off. Yet, I have gained much. Even though they are dead, I am still gaining wisdom from them. I learned to do for myself what they could not do for themselves. I'm making a plan. I also learned, a bit belatedly, a deeper compassion for them, for their fear and frustration. I now know from the inside, not just from the outside, what it's like to experience decline and the growing need for assistance, or to discover how small my financial resources are as compared to the cost of senior care, or to ponder uprooting myself from my current home, my friends, my church, my familiar city, to move to a much less familiar place, to be nearer to my daughter and her family. Even when that makes intellectual sense, the heart does not always line up. All by way of saying, if you don't have this getting ready to move thing in all wrapped up, you probably have a lot of company. Be compassionate with yourself while you keep making and revising your plan. Joan Moser, who's a member of our group, had a little story to tell, but she could not be with us today, so she sent it to me and asked me to read it in her place. She had a friend named Lillian who actually aged in place till she was 102 years old. So I'm going to share Lillian's story of aging in place from Joan Moser. My friend Lillian wanted to age in place and she managed to do that until she died at home at age 102. Our friendship started through a church program of friendly visits, and over nearly 20 years, I observed what aging in place involves. While in her 80s, Lillian and her husband were disappointed by his experience in a skilled nursing facility in Connecticut that until then they considered the best in the area. That experience cemented Lillian's determination to age at home. Her husband died shortly after that nursing home stay. I don't think at the time Lillian had much of a plan for aging in place. She had no near relatives, being an only child, and having no children of her own. But she had steadfast friends, was resourceful, and of sound mind until she died in 2016. One of the first age-related adjustments I witnessed was her having to wear a medical alert necklace after spending a night alone on the kitchen floor. I believe at the time she had someone coming in to help her with physical therapy and someone cleaning the house regularly. The woman who helped with physical therapy, Sue, took on more and more responsibility over the years. When Lillian gave up driving, Sue took her to the grocery store, to the bank, to doctor's appointments, etc. And when a second cleaning lady was suspected of stealing, Sue and Lillian planned a confrontation, caught her red-handed, and ended the arrangement with that cleaning lady. Sue then took on the house cleaning duties, and eventually cooking and laundry, as well as more and more assistance with medical matters, and even helping Lillian with paying bills. Sue's husband, Bob, helped out as needed, too. When Lillian could not walk out to get the mail, Sue arranged for the mail person to bring the mail to the door instead of to the mailbox by the street. Lillian lived in a Cape Cod-style home, which was good since she had all she needed on the main level. Ramps and handrails were added to allow access from the garage to the side entrance. Some modifications were made to the bathroom, but not much more needed to be changed at that time. In her 80s and 90s, Lillian still needed to maintain that home. She dealt with a basement flood. She added new roof and siding. It took her a long time to pick out the color. A paved sidewalk was added, shrubs were removed and replaced. The lawn had to be regularly mowed, the driveway plowed, appliances replaced, and power outages dealt with. Lillian was paying Sue and Bob, but their relationship became much more than a business arrangement. No one could have been a better advocate for Lillian than Sue and her husband. Sue always called Lillian Miss Emery, but Bob called her Mom. In her 90s, Lillian needed to spend some time, a couple of months, in a skilled nursing facility. Upon returning home, she required round-the-clock home care. An agency found a revolving door of health aides for Lillian. Sue and Bob continued to check on her and the health aides almost every day. I believe Sue was a little overly critical, but perhaps that is better than letting things slide. Some aides quit on their own. Some needed to be fired. One aide snuck her husband in at night. Another one from Turkmenistan did not speak English and used her cell phone to translate their conversations. Lillian got pretty good with that technology, which speaks volumes for someone born in 1914. I think all the aides loved Lillian, and she loved them back. In anticipation of her death, Lillian enlisted Sue and Bob to help empty the upstairs and the basement. Lillian outlived all her family, friends, and even Sue. Sue's husband took over watching out for Lillian's well-being in the last 2 years of her life. So you might not be surprised to know Lillian planned her funeral, wrote her own obituary, and picked out the photo she wanted to be used in the obituary. Aging in place for any length of time requires an increasing amount of assistance and may only work for just so long. Lillian was fortunate to have found truly dedicated help, able to put in many hours of care, and she was lucky to be of sound mind, determined, and well-liked. So that's a story of a successful living in place, but with some financial resources and a lot of help. So we have 4 other people here besides Ken and I who, let's see, who might have some comments or some stories to share. Anyone who want to tell us a story? How they're doing? I wrote this little paper, possible topics. Do you have a plan?
Just wait and see if anybody responds.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm just thinking, about it. I do have the will and the paperwork done. I have a son in town. And I guess I'm kind of planning to do what my mother did, stay in my home as long as I can. But I do need to begin thinking about the next step and where to go and choosing a place in case I need to. But I do plan to stay in my home as long as I can.
Come have lunch with me and Mary Alice sometimes. Just to see
Okay.
where we live.
Okay, I will do that.
It's like living in a nice hotel.
Excuse me. We moved. Oh, I'm Bill Haney, and this is my dear sweetheart Sue Beck. And we moved into the place where we're living now, near as we can figure, almost 7 years ago. I guess this January will be 7 years. And it was quite an adjustment.
Where do you live now? Say that for the audience.
Yeah, we live at Abbotswood at Irving Park. And before we moved, we went through a process of thinking about the next step. And so my dad died in his 70s, so I figured that's probably when I'm going to die, even though I'm in pretty good shape. So that was probably the major impetus for us to really get out of the place where we'd been for quite a while. This was well after Aunt Mabel and Sue's mother had lived with us. We'd made 2 moves since then. And luckily, each time we moved, it was into a smaller space. So we had a good long time to get rid of stuff, which is really a very hard thing to do, but it pays off in the end. Now, I've talked a lot. I think you should talk some too.
I'm Sue Beck. When my mother and her sister lived in Florida, they were a happy couple. They bowled constantly. They were able to take care of themselves well into their 90s. But I think we kind of knew that it wasn't going to stay that way much longer. So Bill and I invited them to come and live with us, and they said they would. And the move when they came up from Florida to North Carolina was chaotic. But fortunately, I have 2 children, and they were a great help in helping Bill and I to move into Abbotswood, but before that, to help my own parents and my aunt to move in with us. So Bill and I had probably 3 or 4 years of those 2 elderly people living with us, and we had to do for them what we had to do for ourselves later on. We had to find accommodations for them. They both had strokes and had other problems physically too. So we feel like veterans in a way, I think, because we've talked to so many people who have been through the same thing we have, or who are going through it now, or who are anticipating having to go through it and thinking, well, I'll think of that tomorrow, like Scarlett O'Hara. It's not easy. And yet it's very comforting to me to know that we done it. We did the move. We got rid of the stuff that meant a lot to us, but we didn't have to have it, so we gave it away. And we have gotten to know a lot of people in Abbotswood where we live, and we feel like we have a huge circle of friends there, which I'm sure Ken feels the same way about where he lives. And it can be a lot of fun and very relaxing. So I highly recommend it if you can do it.
I've done a lot of reading and studying about what helps people live to be old and stay healthy most of their lives. And one of the main sources is the Blue Zones. If you haven't read those books, they're quite wonderful. So, project of the National Geographic Society, which studies cultures that have lots of centenarians. And the number one factor they found that among all the cultures they studied is community. People do better in community. And one of the real beauties of where we are right now, we are surrounded by friendly, helpful people. People who work there, but also our neighbors, our friends. It's just delightful to be in company of other people. And I think one of the most dreadful things I can imagine, and I know it is dreadful for many people, is to be old and sick and alone. It's devastating. So one of the big benefits of letting go of your comfort zone and moving into a community is the support you get, not only from the people who work there, but the friends you'll make. It's just I'm so happy we moved there. We're both much better off because of that.
Bill, you mentioned that there were some challenges when you first moved there. Can you talk a little bit about them and how you came to kind of overcome those?
It was really very difficult for me for the first 2 or 3 months that I was there. It seemed as though everyone there was walking with a walker. There probably were a few people that were walking with canes, but it bothered me to see all those people walking with bent over and walking with a walker, even though it's quite likely I'll end up that way myself. It was difficult for me, especially since I'm not as loquacious as my dear wife. But we did some smart moves. Even though we didn't know anything about the place, we became ambassadors, which meant that anybody that moved in, we'd get assigned to them, and we'd sort of steer them around. And then in a moment of weakness, we both joined the steering committee. So gradually, I've gotten to know more and more people there, even if I forget their name quite frequently. But you find people that have similar interests. Sue and I both cook, which is kind of, and we decided early on that we really couldn't eat all of our meals in the dining room, or even a major portion of them, because I guess we're kind of picky about the food that we eat. So it was necessary to meet people other than in the dining room, and it was a challenge for a while. But I frequently, as we walk around, I'll ask Sue, who is that again? Even though I know the person pretty well. So it's been more of adjustment, I think, for me than for Sue. But that was the challenge that I faced.
I disagree. We both had problems. We both, I think, for a while felt like we didn't fit in. We didn't belong there. We were real bouncy. We always still go up and down the stairs. We don't take the elevator unless we have to carry a lot of groceries or something like that. And we're both younger than most of the people there. So I'm 85, Bill's 82. Most of the people there are either close to 90 or they're 90 and past. We have, I think, 4 people there now who are between 101 and 105. And I would agree very much with what Ken said. The community is an amazingly important thing when you get old. Everybody else is old too.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm still living at home with my husband. We haven't made too many plans. We've got legal documents. We've done that. And we haven't really talked about, I think, is this going to be on TV? On YouTube.
Just don't give him the link.
No, I think he should watch it.
Good, well, good, you can give him the link.
Come have lunch with me and Mary Ellen sometime.
Okay.
Just see what it's like.
Just to get things going, we have cleared out some of the stuff in the house. That I have a closet that I can walk into now.
You've done better than me in that regard.
But it's, we have a little more planning to do, I think, so.
What do you think stops you?
Just wanting it to stay the same. And it is going to change, as you said.
It's going to get harder.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
The longer you live, the more bad things will happen.
Yeah,
Inevitable.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
True, but not pretty, but true.
That reminds me of my parents, and this is, I think, a common thing. When we have to make a change, we always can think of all the bad things associated with the change. And what we can't look at is the road in front of us if we stay the same. So when we're trying to make a decision, first of all, we're thinking of it only a decision between 2 alternatives. One time a therapist said, when you only have 2 alternatives, you're tossed on the horns of a dilemma and you can never make a decision. So maybe you need to bust open a few other alternatives, even what living in place might mean, which is not just winging it at home, but actually making the changes that it would take to live there and figuring out what outside help you might need and what that's going to cost, and do you have your resources in place to do that. So I think it's not impossible to stay at home, but as Lillian's story showed us, it's not something that you could just keep doing without anything else, you know? So I don't think it's unusual for us to all get stuck where we are, because change is hard. Change always seems scary compared to the reality, but the current reality. But the current reality, as Ken pointed out, is going to change.
Yeah.
Have anything else to say?
Not really. I'm listening to all this. I still do have some resources. I do have long-term health care insurance that I want to check on how accurate the company is. It is going up a lot, you know, and I guess I sort of feel like that's part of my plan, you know, and still wanting to stay because I really like the neighborhood right now, and having the grandkids up to spend, and you know, but I know someday something is going to happen, and I will have to, it will be otherwise. I'm just appreciating the good days there, and you know, beginning to plan what my options are if and when I have to go. I think all of us would kind of like, okay, my aunt used to say, I really don't want to go, but if I have to go, I just want to wake up dead, you know, not go through everything. And that's true for me.
I'd like to talk about long-term care just briefly, if I can. I'm glad you brought that up, Becky, because long-term care contract is what Bill and I both got. He was 59 and I was 62 when we bought this, and it's run by Continental Insurance Company. But what it does is it pays for your expenses if you have to go in the hospital or if you have to have all kinds of extra care. I won't go into all that, but what shocked me recently was that I thought, well, you know, what would happen if I had a stroke? You know, how would I tell my daughter who to contact and all of that? So I called her over and I said, let's talk about this, and we looked at the whole thing. Turns out that over the lifetime of all this time I've been paying by the month so many dollars, I now have $400,000 available to me if something happens and I need some kind of extra care. And it just shocked me when she said that, but she said, ma'am, if you should get, how did she put it? What you've paid in already is $43,000, but I have available, if I want it or need it, $400,000. It just shocked me. I know a lot of people don't buy long-term care insurance, and that's why I just wanted to mention that.
I'm part of an ongoing online support group for men whose wives have disorders similar to Mary Alice's. And most of them are still living at home, taking care of their wives at home, and having to hire people to come in and take care of them, and having to put ramps on the front house, and having to remodel the bathrooms, and having to make just endless expenses and trouble to maintain the house so they can maintain their wife at home. I am so thankful when I listen to them that I no longer own a home. That if I don't have to worry, anything that goes wrong, I pick up the phone and somebody comes and fixes it for me. That's really, I love being a homeowner. I've owned 8 homes. They're all wonderful. The last place was wonderful. But right now, if I owned a home and had to maintain a home and take care of Mary Alice too, I would be really stressed out. So I think it's a really tremendous advantage to moving into a place where you reduce the number of demands that are on you before you become overwhelmed by them. Because right now, if I were still at home, having to shop, cook, mow the lawn, clean the gutters, on and on, the list goes on, I would be much more stressed out than I am now. Now it's a phone call, boom, boom, somebody fixes it for me.
I also chime in on the long-term care insurance. I do not have it. And the time to get that, and maybe we should send this link to all the people we know who are in their 50s, who are not part of our group, most of them. We have a lot to share for that group. Maybe we ought to have a church meeting where we talk to the people one step down from us. Long-term care insurance is quite expensive, and you have to get it while you're still insurable by their standards, which are really rigid. So when I was young enough to actually be able to get it and afford it, which keeps going up every year, but I was ruled out because of health issues that I had already had. I had cancer twice, I had asthma, so they just denied me. And once you get denied for that policy, no other one of those insurance companies will pick you up. So that was not possible for me. Once you get older, then it's either prohibitively expensive or surely by the time you're 70, you have acquired some kind of health condition that they're no longer interested in insuring. So the time to get that insurance, for anybody out there who's listening, that's under 60, is to get it between the late 50s and the early 60s. And it is, as Sue pointed out, she put in $43,000 over the last almost 20 years now and has $400,000 available to her. So the idea, even though it's expensive, it's worth thinking about if you can at all afford it to get that policy. So share this, with your younger friends to look into that. Anybody else? Well, all you guys out there in YouTube land, we're going to sign off. I have gotten for church something called a yellow dot. It's a yellow envelope that has some paperwork you fill out, and you put a sticker on the outside of your house and a sticker on your car. And if you have an emergency and the EMT people come in, you put this yellow envelope on your refrigerator with all this filled out information. They have all your health information ready for you. You have it in the glove compartment of your car. So I will be handing them out at church on Sunday, and hopefully as many of you, especially those of you who live alone, will take advantage of having one of those yellow dot cards. So thank you, everybody. We're signing off.